onset of using social media for marketing, measuring its results has been a challenge. And one reason for this is because marketers have been accustomed to having very clear metrics with their online advertising campaigns. However, with social media, metrics such as engagement and influence aren't nearly as black and white. But does it have to be so hard? And are marketers really looking where they should? Well, Dave Fleet, the Vice President of Digital at Edelman Toronto, is joining us now by way of Skype to talk about these issues. Thanks so much for talking with us, Dave.
Hi, Abby. Thanks for inviting me.
You're very welcome. Well, for starters, let's talk about why measurement is such a challenge when dealing with social media. I mean, is it really that it's a challenge, or is it just that people aren't approaching it the right way?
I think that we're slowly getting to the point now where in the past, measurement hasn't been a big focus on social media activities, and a lot of people have been able to tell decision makers that just try it and the results will eventually come. And now we're getting to the point in social media where people really do need to start paying attention, and they hadn't been really doing that in the past, and they hadn't been measuring results properly. It's not necessarily as difficult as a lot of people may think. I think that if you set business objectives properly in a way that a lot of marketers have become accustomed to over the years, it's not that difficult to tie social media activities back to those business objectives. It's just making sure that you set them up front, and that's a piece that's really missing from a lot of campaigns nowadays.
Right, I want to get to that point in just a minute, but in a recent post that you wrote on your blog, you talked about how the Harvard Business Review published an article labeling return on influence as the new ROI. So why do you believe that this is misleading?
ROI is a business metric. It measures the return on an investment. That's what it means.
Right.
Influence, especially is the way that in the way that the Harvard Business Review piece had defined it, really is not a concrete number. It's very subjective. There's no real accepted definitions of it across the industry yet. So I really think it's a mistake to try to fit a square peg into a round hole with this and to try and come up with a brand new metric, when what we should really be doing is trying to tie back social media activities for businesses to business objectives. Anything other than that is just skirting the issue.
Well, why is that often a problem, is tying those two together, bridging the gap basically between social media activities and business objectives?
I think it's because a lot of people don't do the initial legwork and the initial thinking when they're coming up with their social media plans. A lot of marketers come at social media from the perspective of, this is cool, we need to do this, like get me a Facebook page, without really thinking through why they want to do it. Are they trying to increase customer satisfaction? Are they trying to drive sales? Are they trying to reduce customer churn? Are they trying to lower costs through support? There's a whole broad list of potential business objectives that companies could have. Once you've figured those out, then you figure out what tactics fall out of that, and you know that they're going to be measurable, or you make sure that they're going to be measurable against those initial business objectives. It's really, it requires expertise and it requires a lot of strategic thinking, but it's not impossible to do.
Well, given your experience in the industry, is it alarming that marketers are being fed so much misinformation?
I'm very alarmed at the tone of conversations that are happening around measurement nowadays related to social media. I think we're getting there, though. There are some very smart people in the field who are really advocating for a proper approach to social media measurement. Katie Payne's been out in the field for years talking about these things. There's been a lot of summits in the last couple of years when a lot of large marketing organizations have committed to solid principles around social media measurement. But I really think that there's still a lot of people out there at the very early stages, and they're not really sure what to measure, and they're not really sure how to get to it. And that's really an education process on both the client side and on the agency side.
Well, now let's talk about some of the things that they should be looking for, like engagement and influence, and how they can do that.
Well, I think it's really the metrics that you should report are really going to depend on who you're reporting to. I think the Altimeter Group, Charlene Lee and Jeremiah Ouyang came up with a great little measurement ROI pyramid, they call it, I think, not too long ago, where they basically divided the metrics that you could use for social media measurement against the audiences you might have. So, things like engagement metrics are going to be really interesting for community managers. They're not going to be useful in a boardroom. And you're going to get laughed out of the room if you try to, put a number of retweets to senior leaders there. for those people, you need to actually be able to tie back to more business-focused objectives, whether that's sales or savings and those kinds of things. I think that's step one, is figuring out who you're talking to, and then working to actually figure out what are the metrics that they're going to be interested in and that they're getting measured on.
Very good. Well, how should marketers identify influencers and reach out to them in the marketplace?
That's a
huge question, huh?
Yeah. I think that, there's an element of it depends out there. There are a lot of companies who are trying to figure this out. Clout is kind of the new shiny when it comes to some of these things, but there are other companies out there. Tracker is one, Peer Index is another. Ultimately, it's going to come down to the specific metrics that your company is going to be looking at, whether that's the reach of influencers, the level of engagement of the people who are actually following them, how often they talk about a topic, the tone that they use to talk about the topic, what niche of that topic they focus on. Really getting into a kind of granular level of detail on these people and getting to know them. I think until you've done that, you can't just plug a name or a field into a computer and come up with a one-size-fits-all solution. It really has to be tailored to the organization.
Absolutely. You can't just copy off of another company because it worked for them.
Nope, and you can't just copy off another client because it worked for that client either.
Right. Okay, well, great information, Dave. Thank you so much for talking with us about it.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And Dave, we'll be speaking more about this area next month at the Blog World Expo, which WebProNews will be covering November 3rd through the 5th. With this WebProNews report, I'm Abby Johnson.